a choice right now, between fear and love. It's just a ride.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expounding reality.
A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Expanding reality.
Welcome to Expanding Reality. I am your host, Brandon Thomas. On this incredibly cool episode, we have author and researcher Mary Joyce joining us to talk about her book, Spy in the Sky, Secrets and Cover-Ups on Earth and Beyond. And this is satellite photos that show things that shouldn't be there, all kinds of cool stuff. On the Earth part of it would be Antarctica and underwater. Really cool underwater stuff that we talk about on this. And the beyond, of course, would be the crazy cool stuff on our moon, all the way out to Mars, and even our sun. It's a super cool conversation. You guys are absolutely going to love Mary, and all the ways to find her book, and her amazing website are going to be located down in the show notes. Make sure that you'll check her out. While you guys are down there, check out also expandingrealitypodcast.com. That's where links to all the socials can be found. That's the central hub for everything. All the videos play over there. Everything's all set up for you guys, so go check it out. Also, that's where you can sign up to become an Expansive Insider. Now, that is where all the bonus stuff is, and that's one of the best ways to support the show. Now, we are a value for value system here, so if you find the show valuable, all we ask is that you like and share like everybody else, but also return the value in exchange. That's just the way that things work, and it's working out pretty well. So you guys hop on board. It's been an incredible ride, and I'm grateful for everybody that's participating in value exchange with us. All right, guys, so let's get to this incredibly cool conversation with Mary Joyce. Ladies and gentlemen, welcoming to the show, we have Mary Joyce hanging out with us. You are an absolute delight. You already have a special place in my heart. You and I have been speaking quite a bit here, and I just really enjoy you. So I'm very excited for my audience to get to know you as well. Now, you sent me your incredibly cool book, Spy in the Sky, and this, of course, guys, is going to be linked down in the show notes, as well as all the other ways to find you, Mary, your website, your YouTube, all the really cool stuff. You do some phenomenal work. And so, like I said, again, I can't wait for my audience to meet you. And up top here, I'd like to thank Mark Eddy, who reached out to me on Facebook. He's facilitated this, and he introduced the two of us. So thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Shout out, man. Y'all go follow him on Facebook there. I'll link him below. So, Mary, for my audience that's not too familiar with you here, do you mind just letting us know a little bit about you, darling?
Well, I'm going to start with something different, because the first time we talked, you saw the cartoons I have back on the wall, and they are done by professional cartoonists. And I worked with in the cartoon department at the Orlando Sentinel many, many years ago. And this conversation that you and I had revealed that you are into cartoons also. So that's how our first conversation started. It had nothing to do with anything else.
Right. We launched.
And you even look like one of the guys that was one of the cartoonists. And his name was Fred Wagner, and he took over the old classic, like editorial kind of cartoon, the Grin and Bear It, which has been around probably since our grandparents.
Yes.
And he had to learn the guy's style when he died, and he took it over. But you look a lot like him. His hair is a little bit shorter than yours, but you look very similar.
All right, Frank, you handsome devil. You're welcome on the show anytime you want, buddy. And it was so sweet when you sent me your book. Not only did you send it, first of all, so thank you again. Number two, you signed it, and it was very sweet. And so you wrote, "Nice surprise, you're in the funny business," in quotes here. And just very, very sweet, because, yes, you and I have an affinity for that. We didn't even touch your book, so all this is going to be fresh for us as far as conversation goes, which is great. But, yeah, you and I just hit it off on comics. And, I told you my story about Calvin and Hobbes, and I'm just in love with them. And that kind of kicked off my love of reading and all of that kind of stuff. So yes, you and I have a lot in common, young lady, and you're a Southern girl too. So that's awesome.
No, I'm not. My mother was Southern. Most of my life was in the North. So I'm more Yankee than Southern.
You're Southern now. So what we say is that you weren't born here, but you got here as fast as you could,
Okay, we'll go with that.
We'll go with that. Yes, ma'am. All right. So Spy in the Sky, tell me about it. What brought this about? It's incredible.
We briefly mentioned the website that I have, which is skyshipsovercachers.com. And we started out just covering things about UFOs. But there is so much that's going on here in the mountains of Western North Carolina that this website just has expanded and expanded. And we've covered Bigfoot and Cherokee Little People and giants, because we've even found skeletons of giants here in these mountains. Did I say underground bases? We just have done a lot of different things. And what happened was that I began to collect all this information from just my own research for the website. And I wasn't finding this anywhere else. And I've had so much of it. And it's really become a mission. I want people to know the information that's being kept from us. And I discovered things on Mars, on the moon, around the sun, at the bottom of the ocean, in Antarctica. And they're all things that hardly anybody knows about. And the book is an adult picture book. There's only 3 pages that don't, well, that's kind of, it looks boring, but that has an explanation with it. Those are the first ones that looked all orange. Those are all Mars pictures.
Yeah.
And those are undersea pictures, and there's some more. But I give the coordinates and I let people find these things for themselves, because we have so many people that are into photoshopping bogus information and bogus images. And so I give people the coordinates. They can use Google Earth and they can find these things for themselves. Now, sometimes, both on Mars and in Antarctica, there have been very deliberate efforts to wipe these things out so people can't see them. And there's a key on the keyboard, which everybody ought to know about if they don't already. And you can print the whole page or the whole screen. And there have been times I've posted things on the website, and the next day they have been blurred out, blotted out, erased. And so if I hadn't hit the print the screen button, I wouldn't have the before and after evidence. Damn. And one of the most dramatic ones was in Antarctica, and I found 2 entrances into Mars. The largest one was about, I'm going to give you round numbers, about 300 feet across and 100 feet high. And the very next day, when that was on the website, it's like somebody picked up a bottle of ink and poured it all over it. And it was like several steps in totally obliterating this. That was the first step. The second step, I zoomed back and I could see where both entrances were. They were both covered up. One had printed on the Google image, Hollow Earth Entrance 1, Hollow Earth Entrance 2. And then the next part of the cover up, the whole area turned to like a sheet of ice, and you would never, ever guess it was there. Damn. So that's the kind of cover up, and that's the kind of evidence that I include when I have experienced the cover ups.
Yeah, and it's like they're subscribed to your website just so that they know what they missed to go blur out. It's like they look at you and they go, okay, we need to go find that thing and blur it out because she told us where it was. And you have some phenomenal pictures in here. This is just such a cool book. I'm so grateful. So the spacecrafts, that skid across, and of course, there's things like the Baltic Sea anomaly, but this one's on Mars. And you have all sorts of cool stuff going on. The second crash site on Mars that you have over here on the other side with these skid marks. And these pictures are so incredible. And I love how you have the far out and then a more zoomed in version, so we get perspective.
Right. And the one that has the yellow color to it, that skid mark, you can measure things on Google Earth, and there is a yellow streak on the north side of it in the skinnier picture up on the top one. That's 4,400 feet in length. So that skid mark is at least that long, and then it plows into the soil of of Mars. And that craft itself is over 400 feet in diameter. Yeah. So we're talking 4 miles in diameter. 4 miles in diameter. So it's huge.
It's crazy. Yeah, the length of the object itself is approximately 416 feet. And it's got 4,422 feet in length and drag here. Fascinating. It's so well detailed, and it's just so cool. It's not overwhelming in the sense of like, oh, there's a lot of data and math and stuff like that. It's so appropriate because you give the information and then you sit back and you let us wonder about it. This reminds me a lot of Richard C. Hoagland's work. Were you a fan of him?
He was early on doing the thing with the face on Mars.
Yeah.
And of course, we've gone way beyond that because the satellite imagery has improved so much. And I have found things that go way beyond the face on Mars. That is something from the past. There is evidence of things going on right now. Like I found 2 habitats, which I use that term to refer to self-contained living structures. So if you're in an alien environment, it's a little bit blurry on here, but at least you get the idea. And in the northern hemisphere, I found one, and it measured 700 feet in length.
Jeez.
Several years later, I went and started exploring the southern hemisphere. I found one that was exactly 10 times bigger. It was 7,000 feet in length. So these are 2 things that look these are not ancient. These are contemporary structures that we're finding. And then you flashed a picture, which looks kind of boring at first, but it's the entrances into Mars.
Oh, yeah.
That you showed at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And the entrances into Mars they range in size from 400 feet in width to about 1,000 feet in width. And the reason I have the detailed pictures of them is because they look the same at first, but then when you look and measure them, and then you look at the details around them, they're not exactly the same. But here is the part I got really excited about. Normally, when I look at a planet and explore it with Google Earth, I go from left to right or right to left. One day, as you say, popped out of my brain and started thinking differently, started going from north to south. And I found 27 warehouse-shaped entrances into Mars, all in a line, spread out over 16 miles. And I just found that phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's like a rash is what you call one of these things on here where it's all scattered out. And I know this is blurry, guys, but definitely check the show notes for the
it looks
link.
like a rash, but when you zero in on it, you can see that they look metal, and they have a tubular shape to them. The pictures in the book, I assure everybody, are sharp. These are not sharp when we see them this way, but at least you have an idea of what they look like.
Yeah, the focus
That's
is all
another
jacked
one
on
that was covered up, because after I posted that, those become kind of blurry looking, and they don't look like they did originally. And again, if anybody starts exploring this stuff, remember that print screen button, hit it, because when you find really good things, sometimes people don't want you to know it or save it. They want to cover it up.
When it's even cooler that you get those and then you have the timestamp from when that was collected, the data is tracked on your machine, and then you release something and then it's covered up and you can track that. You can say, hey, I released this, and then 2 days later it was like this. It was blurred out. And now you have this where you have the actual evidence and it overlays perfectly. That is so interesting. So what else did you find on Mars?
I found the 2 crash sites, which you kind of flashed at us, but I also found a UFO that's parked on Mars. And it is, let's see if I can remember my dimensions again. I think that one's 3.5 miles in diameter. And you can see the shadow. It casts a shadow. And in the middle, it has a raised portion to it, and looks very much like some of the UFOs that we are able to see from Earth. But again, a UFO that's 3.5 miles in diameter is pretty good size.
It's a pretty good size, yeah. You just, like I said, have some phenomenal work in here. This is just awesome. I love this. I love things like that. Okay, so now I'm curious about Antarctica, because you also have some really interesting pictures in here about that. So
there's several things that I get really excited about. One is just the fact that so much is on Mars and happening now, and it's contemporary. And before we get back to Earth, let's stick with Mars just for a little bit.
Sure.
I want to mention a man with great credentials. His name was Hyman Ashid. He was in charge of Israeli space security for almost 30 years. And in December of 2020, he decided to go public about what was going on in Mars. And the whole statement is in my book, but I want to read just a little bit to you.
Please.
First part, that's the man. And one of the statements in there is, they have been waiting for humanity to that's the aliens. They have been waiting for humanity to evolve and reach a stage where we will generally understand what space and spaceships are. There's an agreement between the U.S. government and the aliens. They signed a contract with us to do experiments here. They too are researching and trying to understand the whole fabric of the universe, and they want us as helpers. One more sentence. There's an underground base in the depths of Mars where their representatives are, and also our American astronauts. So I have his statement on one page, and the very next page is where I start going into the warehouse entrances into Mars.
Yeah. And, you've got this statement written out perfectly, and yes, and then it corresponds amazingly with your evidence that you've found with all of these very, right angle open boxes. Again, guys, check the show link notes, and then as well the video versions up here, and we're showing these if you'd like. So the way that
But just imagine 27 of those in a row.
Yeah.
I couldn't get them all in one photo, so I've just given portions of them.
Yeah, and you had a great photo here earlier on, and it's right across from what you said here, and there are 4 very scattered out, and they're very, very small. And so you can kind of
you have to back way up to see them all.
And you can kind of get the scale of what you're talking about here. Absolutely fascinating.
So with that, we can go back to Antarctica.
Yeah.
And I already mentioned the cover up of one of the entrances into Mars. And I guess that's a very active entrance. That's why they don't want any attention drawn to it. That's my theory. It seems to have logic behind it. But almost in September a year ago, we discovered, and there's another person who's helped me with that, we discovered the first of 5 ancient cities that are emerging from the melting ice in Antarctica. The ice in Antarctica is melting really, really fast. And we're finding the box shapes, the rectangular shapes of a city. And not only do you have the box shapes, but they flow in like cities do today, along rivers or along hill shapes. And the significance of this is that most scientists agree that continent's been covered in ice for 34 million years. That makes these structures the oldest in the world. To give you a comparison, the Great Pyramid that everybody thinks is so old isn't even 5,000 years old. So compare that to 34 million. The discovery of those, I think, is phenomenal. And again, there have been efforts when we have posted those to blur them out. And I show before and after pictures on that too.
Yeah. And, maybe this happens quite regularly with like the odd cycles here. We're kind of seeing our magnetic North Pole move quite a bit, very dramatically. They have to update it way more often now, as well as there's evidence of things such as like the Piri-Reis map from the 1500s. He was an incredible map maker. And he even said, though, that his map came from earlier. So he copied it from
his was copying another one that was older than his, yes.
Yeah, and it showed Antarctica free of ice, which is crazy. Now you're thinking of a civilization that if the scientists are right about the ice, and if that map was older than the 1500s, now you're talking about a map that's 34 million years old, that's still, papyrus or
could be a copy
skin.
of a copy, but still, still it's some kind of evidence.
It's very interesting. Now, a quick question for you on this. I was thinking about the modern things that you're finding up there, all the new stuff.
Are we back to Mars now?
Well, yeah, we're just in general, actually. So why do you think that they let that go? I understand old stuff, and especially when NASA was just starting out and they had everything that they were finding on the moon, on Mars, everything like that. Hoagland's work, again, is what just comes to mind. And so they have all this new stuff going up, but they have to know the coordinates of that. And so they have to know, hey, let's blur that out before it makes it to, the public air, so that Mary can't find it, because she's totally going to find it.
They can't blur out the whole. They can't blur out the whole place, and so unless somebody brings it to the world's attention or to somebody's attention, they're not catching it. I'm sure they're covering up some stuff early on, but this has just happened too many times.
Yeah. Agreed. And I just think it's awesome. I think also it's meant to be found. I think you're supposed to find this stuff. I think
I said, this is a mission.
Yeah.
If anybody knows anything about books, especially if you print them in full color, glossy paper, they're expensive. This is not a money-making effort on my part. This is where I'm making a contribution to try to get this out, because I think people have a right to know this.
Love it. Yeah. You got an altruistic mission, and we're on board with you. So again, guys, linked in the show notes, and definitely check the website out and your YouTube as well. All of it will be linked, so guys, check it out. It's incredible. So,
You want to dive under the ocean now?
Yes, I kind of wanted to spend a little bit more time on Antarctica just because I'm curious about what you think is going on there now. There's a lot of heads of state and things that go there at really weird times, like crazy, interesting, famous people go down there. It's very restricted. I know one person that said that he stepped foot on there, Brad Olson, who we've had on the show, phenomenal researcher and author. And you can usually only go to this one little peninsula, and then everything else is off limits, right? So what do you think is going on down there, and what do you think is going on like now?
When I used to live in Florida, I lived between Patrick Air Force Base and the Kennedy Space Center. I got to meet a number of NASA people and one astronaut. The astronaut that I got to meet and talk to kind of has your philosophy and my philosophy, and that is the world has a right to know some of this stuff. He was at Mission Control, and he would monitor the screens from the space shuttle. And one day, he saw two astronauts talking to a tall alien, about 8 or 9 feet tall, in the open bay of the shuttle. And you could see the ET's vehicle parked at the end of this. And it was on the screen long enough for him to really get a good view of it. He talked too much, and he eventually lost his job. He lost all his benefits. He got blackballed. He couldn't find a job anywhere else. Because he really felt the world had a right to know some of this. It's not that he thought the public had a right to know everything, but he thought some of this we do have a right to know. He became a very good friend of Wernher von Braun, which is going to tie this back to your original question. And the two of them had a whole lot in common. And when von Braun would come to Florida from Houston, the two would get together. And many times there were conventions that were going on, or awards dinners or whatever. And the two of them would go out by a pool or out by the ocean and get away from everybody so they could talk. And also so von Braun could smoke, as he was an avid smoker. And one of the things that he told Clark was that the Nazis had built what they call a Shangri-La for Hitler in Antarctica. So that goes back to World War II. That's one thing. Another thing that he revealed to Clark was that the ETs from Aldebaran were the ones that were providing information for the Nazi space program, because they had early versions of UFOs during World War II. Yeah. And so a lot of that activity was going on in Antarctica. Believe it or this is all going to tie together. Believe it or not, the biggest chain of volcanoes in the world is in Antarctica. If you look at Antarctica, where we have North and South America to the north, it would be on the western side. And there's 138, I think. Anyhow, so those volcanoes are helping to heat up that planet even faster, because two of them are constantly active, and then there's a whole slew of other ones. Those volcanoes in the past have created volcanic tubes. And so the ETs, and then I guess the Nazis later, developed these volcanic tubes and expanded them and used them as underground facilities. At least that would be the way they started them.
Yeah, because most of the excavation had already been done, plus they're vitrified, the edges, because of the heat. It kind of incinerates things and makes it a lot more stable as far as structurally goes for carrying load. Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I'm grateful that you brought up the von Braun connection and the Nazis. I had an expansive insider with a couple of friends of mine, and we were speaking about Operation High Jump and, of course, Antarctica, and that you got to bring up the Nazis in New Schwabenland. And, there was a crash, I want to say it was in Belgium or Bulgaria, I can't remember which one, in 1938. Belgium, I'm going to say. And so, allegedly, the Nazis recovered this thing. They then take it down to Antarctica and formed New Schwabenland, and this is kind of what you're talking about and ties into the lava tubes and everything like that. The cover on this for going down there in 1939 was that they were looking for whale oil. So I've got this super cheesy joke. I'm just going to give it to you here now. So the joke is that the Nazis were going down to Antarctica to become a whale-oiled machine, right? So you don't have to laugh at that. That's fine, ma'am. Thank you, though. You're very sweet. So it's very interesting, though, again, this tie-in in this New Schwabenland, and, Klaus Schwab is related to that. His grandfather actually did a lot of work down there. So there's a bunch of interesting tie-ins to what's going on today in Antarctica, which is why it's so fascinating to me, and I wanted to get your take on it, because there's just so many interesting things going down on there.
I can't remember the year right now, but there was one year, I think it was around election time, and Secretary of State Kerry, he was one of the ones that went down there, but the leaders of major countries went down there, which you might expect. One thing that was kind of strange was that what do you call it? It's the Pope for the Orthodox Church in Russia. He has a different name, but we'll call him the Pope of Russia. And before he went down there, he met with the Roman Pope for the first time ever. And they spent several hours talking together before the Russian Pope went down to Antarctica. Damn. And I thought that was kind of interesting that they got together first.
Yeah. Popovich, I think is what you say, right? Or Popovich. It's a Popovich. Russian for
I don't remember his name.
Again, being silly, and it's just silly. We're having a good time.
Oh, okay.
I have to let you know when I'm being funny, which I absolutely adore. You're wonderful. So Antarctica is a crazy place. It's very interesting, and I'm grateful that you brought up Kerry as well. I want to say it was right after the 2016 election, right?
That sounds about right.
A day after. Day after he went down there, and it's really weird.
It was
weird.
really
Hillary
tied
Clinton,
with an election, and nobody expected him to be anywhere but in the United States at that point.
Right. And he was like, nope, going to go to Antarctica. Buzz Aldrin's been down there. Just a bunch of weird stuff. The guest list on who gets to go down there and all the secrecy is very interesting. Again, the Antarctic Treaty, which Russia allegedly has pulled out of. So there may be a little bit more disclosure, at least controversy, to point our attention that way. Maybe we've got something to look forward to. So, yes, let's go underwater now. What is your favorite story about underwater?
My favorite one.
Yeah.
First of all, the thing that started this for me was had nothing to do with something I found, and I do have it in the book. And it's a major structure that was found off of Malibu, California. Yep. So I figured if we and it's huge. Those pillars are hundreds of feet tall, and it's got a thick roof. The dimensions are probably right there on the page for you, but
yeah. We're looking at 500 feet thick.
Right.
That's the pillars huge. Beneath are 600 to 630 feet tall. And yes, I have seen this image before. And again, I'm grateful.
Right. Now, I get no credit for that, but I wanted it in the book because that's what inspired me to start cruising the entire coastline. So I spent, I don't know how much time going from Alaska down to the Baja Peninsula and found a lot of things. And my favorite one is something that definitely looks like an airport. And in the book, I have a picture of that airport and a picture of the Spokane International Airport, so you can see how similar they are in structure. Now, the significant difference is that the one under the ocean, which again you can see very clearly in the book, is 89 miles in length. The longest airport in the world right now is just barely longer than 3 miles. That's roughly 36 miles difference in length. That's roughly the distance between New York and Philadelphia. What in the world would have a structure that big? My own working theory is that there absolutely was a continent that existed in prehistory in the Pacific, known as Lemuria or Mu. And I think these ancient structures I found along the Pacific coast are remnants of that ancient culture.
So cool.
Now, I've done something real recently. Let's see, have I got it posted yet? Yes, it was just posted on our website, skyshipsovercachers.com. And it's about some of the finds in Micronesia. And the natives there have old stories about in ancient times there were giants that flew in the sky, and there was war in the sky, and there was a governor that operated out of there for Germany at one point, and he went to one of the ruins, the ancient ruins. I believe it was Nan Madol, and they found the tombs of giants, and one of them was almost 10 feet in height. So if we're talking giant people riding giant vehicles, they might have a giant runway.
And Namdal is one of, excuse me, Namdal is one of the most fascinating places, and I'm again grateful that you included it in this article, and you sent it to me, and I appreciate that because I was looking over it, and yes, it's absolutely fascinating. I saw this about that island in Micronesia, and I was blown away by it because nobody knows how it got out there, how it was created. It's so far away, and it makes so much more sense, your theory as well, that something was there and then water rose up to meet it, right? And everything else was sunken beneath it, and that's how it was gotten there, that it wasn't all water before. So
Right.
absolutely fascinating, and I love the tie-in with giants. There's so many interesting things about giants. To stick with giants real quick and kind of sideball here just a little bit, have you heard about the giants in the Grand Canyon?
I have.
What do you think?
I think there were giants all over this country, and I've read a couple of books on it where people have really done some great research. And the sad thing is that so many of these skeletons that have been found have been sent off to the Smithsonian, and then the public never sees them again. Here at the university that's close to me, it's Western Carolina University, they, according to the two anthropology students I've talked to that have graduated, they said that there were two giant skeletons in their forensic lab. I never saw them myself, but these people were coming across as very credible. They said they each had 6 toes. And then I was at Dunkin' Donuts having coffee one day, and I heard an anthropology student talking to somebody else. And so I entered myself into the conversation. And she told me that those skeletons and also the remains of the Cherokee Little People had again been sent to the Smithsonian, which just tears me up because if history gives us any indication, we probably won't see them again.
You won't, and I've heard horror stories about the Smithsonian throwing items off of boats in the middle of the ocean after excavation so that they don't they don't challenge the official narrative. So what's going on with that? Why, if we have evidence for it, why do you think the giants are being suppressed?
I don't know. I really don't know. Why do people want to cling so hard to the history that we've been spoon-fed up to this point? We should be able to accept the truth.
Agreed.
And my goodness, even the people who are very fundamental in their Christian beliefs, the Bible is full of stories about giants. Yeah. So if they can accept giants in the Bible, they shouldn't be bent out of shape if we find out we had some around here too.
The issue is, and I completely agree with you, that their God and religious text tells them that there were giants and that just happened. But scientists tell them that there wasn't. Now, this is a very interesting relationship then, because now Christians don't believe scientists when they say anything because they don't recognize things that are here, because they obviously don't recognize their religion. And so therefore they're against us, right? Number one, they're sinners and they're going to hell anyway. Now, another interesting thing is that there's evidence for it, but it's so hidden, like we just discussed with the Smithsonian, that mainstream science doesn't have access to be able to investigate and go ahead and come out with that. So it's just this interesting dichotomy that we have here where some folks, see it in their Bible, but science doesn't validate it for them. So there's no way of witnessing it in their reality other than the faith that they have in their religion that they existed. It's fascinating. Do you think that this will change and that science will just finally just go, you know what, there was amazing stuff going on here. We had giants, we had all sorts of cool stuff.
With all the websites and podcasts and video shows and even Ancient Aliens, things like that, we are pushing those that are controlling things to the point where they will have to reveal things. Like our government has, has exposed the fact that there are UFOs that they can't explain. All they're showing are these little TikTok images in a radar image, which is like showing you the big toe of a giant, and that's
right.
it. There's so much more, but they have been forced to do that. And so the little guys, like you and me, are the grassroots that can help push this so that it'll have to be acknowledged at some point.
Ain't nothing little about either one of us, ma'am. You and I are giants in disguise. We just kind of tone it down a little bit as to be more relatable for folks, and that's how I see both of us.
That's it.
And again, it's very interesting, this kind of, psychological operation. I mean, it seems very contrived. It seems very deliberate, and it is to mislead you so you don't really know what not only our history was, but this place is. I find this very interesting that there's such a cover up and they think we can't handle it and all that kind of stuff. But what's interesting, and to your point about us giants out here making these ripples in the pond, is that it's valuable, as far as a commodity goes. Like, these shows are getting huge as far as people just talking about UFOs. These are $1 million shows. These are multi-million people listening and tuning into these things. So there's a market for it now, which is really interesting. And, your money speaks louder than anything else, right? So I think exposing this stuff, and then when they get good ad time on Discovery for running a Bigfoot show or something like that, if it's well done, then they see the benefits in putting this information out there for you. So like you, I agree. It's very valuable. Because we're able to kind of make up our own mind, and it encourages critical thinking, these choice points in your reality.
And each person in their own show feels like they're kind of alone, but there's a lot of people who are doing these things. And that's great. That's great.
In my mind, I'd see it the other way around, because it's such a big part of my life. And I see it as because the number of people I speak to in a regular, per capita type of a basis is so small that doesn't recognize UFOs, is some sort of psychic, something crazy amazing, right? And so for me, in my reality, it looks like it's very populated with this, which is exciting for me. And it's kind of like this literal split, that Dolores Cannon talks about this idea about how, they're over there playing their games or whatever, and we're over here doing the real work and, talking about this amazing book, Spy in the Sky, and hanging out with Mary Joyce and stuff. So it feels to me like it's a complete separation. But I know that there's a populace of people out there who haven't really entertained this stuff yet. But I, like you, think that it's become too mainstream now. It's become too popular, which is exciting.
There used to be a time, if you talked about, let's say, UFOs, let's say there used to be a talk show with Larry King. And at that time, he was a big interviewer on mainstream television. But at that point, if you came on and talked about believing in UFOs, there always had to be the skeptic on the program at the same time.
Yes.
We no longer have that. So that's progress.
That is an awesome point. You bring up such an amazing point, because not only that, you would see this on like Phil Donahue or something, right? These old school shows, and there'd be like one dude that's like, hey, UFOs are real. I kind of got scooped up by one. And then 4 panels, or 4 deep of doctors and experts and psychologists telling him he's crazy, and the audience just booing him. And so I agree with you. Now that voice is absent from the presentation of the information, which is huge. That's a massive step.
And we got to remember those kind of things.
Yes.
Or people who don't remember those things, we need to tell them.
The perspective, Mary. Thank you so much. That was awesome. So let's talk about some undersea pyramids, because that undersea crystal pyramid that they found in the near the Bermuda Triangle years ago.
The structures that I have found and presented in the book that are in the Pacific are totally different than the ones in the Atlantic. And I can give you a personal story on this one. When I lived on Cocoa Beach, I was with a friend, and we were talking to a couple who were divers, and we were at the pier in Cocoa Beach. And they were excited because they had been down to Vero Beach and had been diving, and they had seen the peak of a pyramid in the sand. Now, in the Atlantic, there's a lot of sandy bottom. So when there is a major storm, that will get all churned up. And people who are treasure hunters, that's when they will go to the beach. That's when they will fly in little planes along the coast, because that's when they're most likely to find old wrecks or whatever. Well, that's when these pyramids show up too. So I had heard this in this conversation at the bar at the pier. And I began to explore things on my own. And in the book, I have a picture of 2 pyramids that are just south of Paradise Island in the Bahamas. And one of those is a standard pyramid, and the other one is it looks like a step pyramid. No sooner did I post that on the website that somebody had gone in there with a little strip, almost like a Band-Aid, photographic satellite strip and put it right over where those were. So I have pictures of that before and after again. So when I say secrets and cover-ups, there's cover-ups quite in many places.
They're literally covering it up with just a
Literally covering it up.
Yeah, a
literally.
Band-Aid strip of image.
And they did that on Mars too. I have found like a city structure up there with the square walls, and it's spread over 2 of the photographic strips. Once I posted that, the clear delineation of those walls, on one half, they put a totally different strip in there. It looks like it's from the moon. Doesn't look like it's related to Mars at all. On the other side, it's just blurred. So I have the before and after pictures again. So when I talk about cover-ups, I've got a lot of evidence in that book to show that, yes, they really do cover things up.
Damn. So, and I'm thinking of also like the moon spire and the spires on Phobos and Phobos, the moons of Mars and everything like that, the spire. And even Aldrin screwed up and talked about the spire on Phobos once. And what they used to do with it was just kind of blur it out a little bit. What was funny about it, though, is you could still see the shadow coming off, and people could still note different things and lights coming out of craters and stuff like that. I've got there's a gentleman in the business. His name is Crow777. I just recently had him on. He is a huge sky watcher. He has a telescope and he does these amazing recordings. He filmed something called the lunar wave. Have you ever heard of this or seen that?
No.
It's basically a ripple that goes over the entire moon, where it's zoomed way in on the moon. I'm going to send it to you so that you can see it. But just to explain it here, there's a ripple that goes over the moon, like it's a refresh or something like that. There's a lot of speculation about the moon. What do you think is going on the moon?
I use Google Earth to explore the moon. I had very low expectations because we have been covering up stuff on the moon for decades.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, I found one thing, and that was a white pyramid, which clearly looks like a white pyramid. It's 28 feet longer than a football field on each side, and it faces the Earth. And I have the coordinates, so anybody can go find it. Why that has been left there, I do not know.
Yeah, clearly foresighted there. That is absolutely fascinating. Again, guys, book link.
More importantly, I include a transcript of an interview with Donna Hare.
Yeah.
And she had some kind of high security clearance. She worked in the NASA photo lab. She got different awards for many different things. And that's Donna Hare in that picture there.
There you go.
And a couple of things stood out from that transcript, and it's interesting to read the whole thing. But one of the things that really stood out to me was she had another office in another location, and somebody from NASA came into her office, and he had a big gash on his head. And so she asked him about it, and from the way it goes, it sounds like she knew him beforehand. And he had, one of his jobs was to burn NASA photos of the moon so that people wouldn't see them. He took too long to look at one of these, and the guard that was guarding him whacked him with the rifle butt, and that was the reason he had a gash in his head. So she gave evidence that they are destroying pictures. She also said in that interview that there are thousands of moon photos that NASA has airbrushed the images.
Yeah.
And, she was right there where it was happening.
Donna Hare's story is fascinating. She was at the 2001 Press Club, National Press Club with Greer as well. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, she died within this year. I think the beginning of this year she died.
Oh, did she?
But this was back in 1995, so she was really, really breaking news. And that was in Washington, D.C., before we had podcasts. And it was on one of the major talk radio stations in Washington, D.C. So I give her a lot of credit for being so bold.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you found things over off of Canada. You found things off of Alaska, which is absolutely fascinating. Mark Ricksecker, we've had him on the show, and he talks about the Alaskan Triangle and all the interesting things coming up there. But I'm very fascinated in what you said about basically the building styles or the architecture. You know, when we compare things on like the 33rd parallel and things like that, you'll find similar megaliths, but they have their own style. You know, like the Teotihuacan, they built a pyramid complex, and it was obviously pyramids, but it was very Teotihuacan. You know, it was very their style. Same thing, Palenque. Then you've got the stuff in Peru, and then we go over to Giza, and then allegedly Bosnian pyramids, and in China, and all this kind of stuff. And they're definitely pyramid structures, but they're different and kind of tailored to the architecture, the style, the building materials available, all that kind of stuff. So whenever you talk about Mu in the Pacific and then Atlantis in the Atlantic, correct? You know, that's basically where those were. It's fascinating to me that there are different building styles because this would fit in line.
Different sizes and different styles, totally. So that is two clear, distinct civilizations, or we would have the same pattern showing up like the pyramids show up in so much of the world.
And what's even more interesting is the airport that you found under the water here. I just want to come back to the 3,000-mile long one, or foot-long one.
It's 89 miles long. A regular airport is the longest one is 3 miles long to give the comparison.
Perfect. Absolutely. And thank you. It's interesting to me how a runway would have been necessary. I mean, this has the bi angles and everything. So again, I'm grateful that you included the current airport below here and in Spokane. And it's interesting to me because when we talk about like Mu and Atlantis and stuff, I think UFOs. I don't think fixed wing flight that needs a lot of room to take off. You know what I mean? I'm thinking UFOs and stuff like that. So it's interesting that they had the need for a long stretch of runway like that.
Also think about the things that look like runways down in Peru. The Nazca Plains.
Yeah.
Those are long too.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's that was my next question. So, you know, are we sure that this is an airport? But those long straight lines do kind of, like the Nazca lines, and Daniken did wonderful work. Von Daniken did wonderful work on this as well. They kind of draw you in, and they're of course, that's just a fascinating story, guys. So definitely check into that. But you can only see those patterns from above, which is fascinating. Have you found anything like that under the ocean or on Mars or anything like that? Anything animal-like or bird-like or anything?
No.
Okay.
Not under the ocean.
Yeah.
No.
All on land.
No, everything looks like structures of some kind or another.
Yeah.
Or farmers' fields. There's one that looks like a major farmer's field. You can see all the markings, but who knows what it really was.
Yeah, and there was that wall that somebody found that's a kilometer high or something like that, and it goes from pole to pole all the way down into a wall that goes underneath the ocean. It's unmistakable. It's absolutely fascinating. I'll have to send you that too for your next book.
Boy, are you making a list so I can get all this good stuff?
Yes, absolutely. We share the info here. You know, this is your next.
Oh yeah, I know. That's why I put the coordinates out there. I want people to see stuff.
I love it. Okay, let's talk about the sun real quick because you have found some really cool things. Now,
I can never promise that the stuff I found with Google Earth that nobody else in the world has ever stumbled on these things. I can't promise you that, but I can. It's very likely you haven't seen these things. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the things, the giant UFOs around the sun, I know for a fact they haven't been published anywhere else. And in 2013, I was contacted by a man in the Netherlands, and he sent me, I have them in the book. I have the original NASA photos. And then what he did was he cleaned up the debris. He zoomed in on these things, and then he cleared it up so you could see the detail of it. Now, the one that there's one there, it looks like it has a wing structure. We found two of those, and one we called the ISIS Hotel, and the other one we called the Flying Phoenix.
Yeah. Because
when you see more detail than what we're able to see on the screen here, they look like condominiums. Now, these are huge. Every single one in the book is bigger than Jupiter, and some of them are bigger than the sun. There's one that looks like an extension rod. It goes way out like this. It's longer than the width of the sun, and the width of the sun, that's just a portion of it. The width of the sun is over 800,000 miles. So there it is. Yeah, compare that to the sun, and it's humongous. Absolutely humongous.
It's amazing. And I've seen these videos of UFOs that look like they're sucking energy from the sun. Have you seen that?
Yeah, there's one that it's like a round ball. It has like an umbilical cord connected to the sun. It was up there for well over 70 hours, I think.
Yeah, something
maybe
crazy.
longer. And it really looks like it was refueling.
And we've seen this with UFOs over water as well, is that they will kind of suck water spouts up like they're powered by water or something like that. They may get memory from it as well, which is really deep and awesome. Perhaps that they know all the information on Earth by just sucking up the water because all the memory of everything is contained within water. That would be.
By the way, I want to assure that your viewers that they're seeing blurry pictures when you hold it up, but the pictures are pretty sharp and clear. Yeah,
the way the camera's focus is set, it's a manual focus thing, so it's going to focus back here, but back here it doesn't look right. So, yes, all the images in there will be blurry a little bit, but I'll tell you what, I'll run through.
No, that's okay. That gives people a hint of it. I just want them to know that the pictures in the book aren't blurry like that.
No, they're not. No, they're wonderful, and it's an awesome job you did on this, and I know that these aren't inexpensive to make, and you still spent the extra cash and did it for us at the behest of the experience of the reader here. And so thank you for doing that. Honestly, you've given us something really, really nice to enjoy. And it's just one of those books you get so excited about. Whenever it came in, I was just skipping. My wife brought it
It's
up
also the kind of thing you can leave on the table and you don't have to say a word. People usually pick it up and you can get them thinking, and you can get conversations going that you might not otherwise get into.
It's a great point. It's been back here, and I've just been thumbing through it for the past week or so. So absolutely outstanding. Well, I am very curious about what you think about deep underground military bases before we let you run here. So tell us a little bit about that. What do you think's going on?
Okay, I've actually done a book on that. It's called Underground Military Bases Hidden in North Carolina Mountains. And I write about 5 of them here in Western North Carolina. And it's interesting. They tend to be under public lands. The most recent one that's been built is beneath the Smoky Mountain National Park. There's one that's near Chimney Rock, which is a state park here. There's one near where all the Brown Mountain lights are seen in North Carolina. But anyhow, that started because there was a couple that kept coming into where I was working at the time. They knew about the website. They would shyly and gingerly bring up the subject of UFOs and start to talk to me. And they came in repeatedly. And finally I said, they had seen some stuff. And I said, well, let me interview you. And so they finally agreed to it. And we met at their camper trailer. And that wasn't the reason they wanted to meet with me. The woman had grown up on a high security military base where everybody, including the family members of the employees, were sworn to secrecy and got in deep doo-doo if they talked. And she wanted to tell me about a facility here in North Carolina that's beneath the Pisgah Astronomical Research Institute. That's what it's called now. But it used to be with the Department of Defense. And she's the one that told me it was 6 stories deep, city size, self-sufficient. And she gave me a whole lot of other information. And she said they're doing things with mind control there. Well, needless to say, I started with her story, and I just kept digging, and I kept finding people who were willing to tell me things. And so that's how that book got started.
Damn. And yes,
but I had to be checked out. She and her husband had to know that they could trust me before I ever got a story out of that.
Yeah, and you've got a phenomenal list of books here. Bigfoot, Beyond the Footprints, Tangible Evidence of Jesus Christ Left Behind for Us to Find, Cherokee, The Little People Were Real, Underground Military Bases, and Spy in the Sky. It's fascinating. You've, of course, been on Coast to Coast, which has a special place in my heart. And that's unbelievable. Well, Mary Joyce, we will have you back any damn time that you want. You have an open invitation. This has been phenomenal. Spy in the Sky and all of the ways to find her, guys, will be located down in the show notes. Make sure that you check her out. Mary Joyce, thank you so much. This is incredible.
Thank you. It was a joy talking to you.
All the hugs in the world right there going out to Mary A. Joyce for coming by and hanging out with us. Her website linked below. Make sure you guys check that out as well. She has a wonderful wealth of different topics that she covers over there, kind of like us over here on the show, but just a really cool wealth of information, guys. It's amazing and wide and varied, but all super badass. Now, her book, Spy in the Sky, that we talked about on the show here today, Secrets and Cover-Ups on Earth and Beyond, will be located down there right alongside her website, so make sure y'all check that out. While you guys are down in the show notes, check out our affiliate links. We've got Food Forest Abundance, Get Your Freedom from Fear on, Opus, the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support. If you want to start your own podcast, there is a link down there that reads Start Your Own Podcast. Made it as obvious as I could for you. We partnered with Red Circle, and that's going to get you started in the right direction. Now, also, if you really want to step your game up while you're starting your own podcast, you just want to go ahead and do it. The Manifestors guy, Dewey Taylor, a good friend of mine, started a sponsorship offer just for you, the listeners of this show. At checkout, type Expanding Reality, all caps, no spaces. That's how you get it done. Awesome, awesome stuff. Now, also, while you guys are down there, expandingrealitypodcast.com. That is our central hub. That's our baby. That's where we're at. That's where everything's going. So check that out for sure, guys. Everything is played over there completely free. Now, if you want to support the show and hop into the bonus side of stuff, that's also where you can do that. And it's called Becoming an Expansive Insider. And you sign up for that thing, you get on there. One of the best ways to support the show, guys. But if you want to support the show and you don't want to do all that and take advantage of that cool stuff, then no worries at all. Support the mission. That's how you get it done right there. All right, everybody, so go out into this incredibly cool place, whatever the hell this thing is, and y'all pick up a piece of litter. Be nice to everybody you come across. Get out of the left-hand lane, because you know that's a pain in the ass. And above all, and anything else, go out into this incredibly beautiful and mysterious place, whatever the hell this thing is, and y'all just be good to one another. That's it. Just be good to one another. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, for engaging, and just being the coolest sons of bitches ever. We'll see you next time.